All righty, it looks like we're ready to go. They're just going to be late. No, they're here for a reason. All righty. Jennifer, could you call the roll, please?
Sure. For the State Treasurer, Mr. Boykin. For the Director of Finance, Mr. Reyes.
Present.
Mr. Rosensteel.
Here.
And for the State Controller, Mr. McGuire.
Here.
Chairperson Dillon, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm sure that our other board members will be joining us immediately. All righty. Our first item of business is approval of our board agenda and work plan. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. So moved. Because we are running late and we did have a time certain event with no objections, I'd like to go right to Jack's report.
Thanks.
There's no objections. Jack, you're up.
Thank you very much. I wanted to focus on TRB page 35, if I could, and really just take a pause from the printed words and let you meet the staff that are behind this item. If I had to identify for you one of the top three things where CalSTRS is radically different than 10 years ago, it is absolutely in our communications. The professionalism, the strategic quality about them, the over-preparation that we do on many issues really is based on just some exceptional leadership and execution from this group. On my right, we put for you actually living examples from these awards that we received. And it's amazing when we put this list together ourselves. Our goal here is not to get awards, obviously, and spend time doing that, but we were recognized for so many different efforts. And hopefully you realized it wasn't just for a printed document or just for video. It really represents a wide range of medium that we all use today for communication. So it shows you where if we were 10 years ago when I was hired, we were primarily a print shop here doing printed communications, and we had a fledgling website at best. And now we have specialists in audio production and TV, this and that. So I want to, you all know Krista Noonan, our Director of Communications, and Krista's right there with the mic. And I actually want you to meet the staff that really put all these efforts together and really make such a difference. And I have to tell you, all the business areas here rely on communications. They recognize we don't have the personal skills to put this together in great communication messages. So we all look to communications to do so much. So Krista?
Excellent. Thank you, Jack. Hello, board members. First off, I'd like to take a moment just to introduce my staff, and then I'll go through the different pieces that we have here that have won several awards. As Jack said, the staff here, they're really the ones behind all of this. They are so talented, and I'm very, very honored to be leading them. So first off, we have Ricardo Duran. Ricardo is in our media relations department. We have Dave Geberding. Dave is in charge of all the videos that you see quite frequently and does a great job at those. Linda Hightower is my executive assistant. Susan Hyman is in internal communications. Mike Cecilia is the director of media relations. Christy Mullen is in marketing and publications, so she's doing a lot of the writing for the members. Really great grammarian. I love working with her. Then we have Kathy Halstead. Kathy is the manager of the internal communications and project management unit. Chad Christman is the manager of the multimedia and video production unit. Veronica Espinoza is a graphic designer 3. Then we have Bautran Bowie as a graphic designer 1, as well as Christine Jackson, who's also a graphic designer 1. Jody Jackson, no relation, is the manager of our strategic projects. She works on a lot of the building theming and the graphics throughout the buildings. Patrice James is on our multimedia unit. She's sending out all the social media updates that everyone receives. Margaret Bean is the manager of our marketing and publications unit. Bruce Sandin he's really the jack of all trades who handles making sure everything gets printed and distributed to the members, so he does a great job with that. Michelle Mazzuto is on the media relations team. She's a real expert at researching a lot of the articles, making sure we're staying on top of the news. Gretchen Ziegler is part of the strategic communications team on the funding strategy. And then David Lindgren is also in our marketing and publications unit. So that is my team. And what I'd like to do now is go through the pieces that won several awards. The very first award is the 2011 member kit. That was recognized, and when I'm saying they've won awards, these are national, sometimes international associations, and sometimes statewide that are recognizing the different publications. The 2011 member kit for all 3 phases, so newly vested members receive it, mid-career, and then nearing retirement. That won awards of excellence from Graphic Design USA, as well as the National Association of Government Communicators. Then we have Welcome to CalSTRS, and that was awarded an award of excellence from Graphic Design USA. Next up is the Virtuoso program. I know you've heard about the Virtuoso program. That's where we're recognizing the internal employees. There's 13 employees within CalSTRS who are recognized. That won several awards. We're very, very, very proud of it. We did both a video on the program as well as several panels throughout the building representing each employee. The video that Dave produced and that the staff worked on won a Telly Award, which I wish I could bring it downstairs, but I would need a cart to bring it down. It's actually made by, I think this is correct, Dave. It's made by the same company who makes the Oscars.
Right on.
So it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous award. And then SIOC is the State Information Officers Council. We won a silver award with them. The International Association of Business Communicators also recognized us, and once again, the National Association of Government Communicators. The next up is the GAP video. That was a member-focused video that talked about the importance of addressing your gap, not just relying on the defined benefit, but also making sure that you're investing in other ways for your retirement. That won several awards as well. It won Magnum Opus, which is a national, very, very prestigious organization. It won a gold award through the State Information Officers Council. And it won awards of excellence from both the International Association of Business Communicators and the National Association of Government Communicators. And last but not least, we have our internal employee newsletter. This was an electronic newsletter that we would send quarterly to employees, and that won an award of excellence from the California Association of Public Information Officers. So that is our awards of excellence for the past fiscal year, and we're looking forward to winning even more this next year.
There you go.
Thank you, Kristen. Thanks.
Thank you all so much for the stellar job you do for us.
Thanks. Hopefully you can all see how this fits together too. From the Benefits and Services Committee that Sharon just chaired, they went through the member survey, and you can see how that points us in directions of where we can improve and where we can connect better with the membership. And they are tied very tightly at the hip now to the business areas, really trying to give them some strategic thinking on how to improve their areas, all areas of the organization, from investments to benefits. They're supporting them now, so they've done a great job.
Congratulations.
Thanks, everyone. Great.
Can I mention something before everyone leaves?
Yes.
I chimed in.
Go. Let me get you.
Hang on one second. Oh, don't leave yet. Don't leave. Okay.
There you go,
Sorry.
Sharon. Go quick.
I just wanted, before you all leave, I just wanted to mention when I was getting ready for this board meeting about 10 days ago, I was, looking on our board book, and I had to look up something, and so I went to the member handbook for 2012, and I read a lot of things these days, and I was just stunned by the color.
Yeah.
And and everything's color coded. Like teal means one thing, and the dark brown, and I just it was something visually. I don't respond a lot to publications and just the visual part of it. So I think I just wanted to communicate. Online it looks really, it just pops, the color, and it was really easy to find things because it was sort of color coded. So for a board member, it helped me get information more easily too, just because of the colors. So I just wanted to say, I really love, I know it's not on the award list yet, maybe it will be next year, but the member handbook is really excellent. So thanks for all your hard work. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
It will
Great.
definitely be on the awards list next year.
All right.
And you
Next
can
year.
thank Veronica Espinoza and the graphic design team. They really have been doing a fabulous job with color coding. And it's really fascinating. Sometime it would be interesting to have them give a presentation on the meanings of colors. It's really fascinating to listen to all of that. But the member handbook was,
Philosophical.
You
really,
would be
Veronica did it, and
surprised.
she did a great job.
Okay, thanks.
Is that an agenda for the next year?
I tell you, I
That's
sat through that the other day, and I
information
was quite amazed. There is a lot of thinking going into every decision made on our publications. It's incredible. A lot of our design work used to be contracted out, quite honestly, to commercial designers, and this group has gotten so stellar that we're doing it in the building, so it's great. Yeah.
Terrific.
Excellent.
All right, thanks, Krista.
Thank you.
Thank everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. A second thing, just an important staff issue I wanted to bring to your attention. Since beyond the executive staff, you often meet some of our key directors in the organization, and we just completed filling one of our most key positions, and that is head of our service retirement division. Clearly, that is one of our focal points for service where people retire through. It's an area that's gone through extraordinary changes now that you can apply online. We also have really piloted some of our most innovative imaging changes in the organization where we're doing document imaging, not just imaging stuff, but actually doing workflow control through the imaging process. So service retirement has been a bit of a guinea pig for some of our innovative practices in the organization as we put those in other areas. So we had a vacancy in that area. We did an open selection process for that position, and I want to introduce the new director. It's Christine Campagna. Christine, if you'd stand up for me, thanks. Just so everyone meets you. And Christine's is brand new to CalSTRS. We had active competition for the position from a lot of good candidates, but she's not new to retirement at all. She's a very experienced manager coming from our sister system, CalPERS, and had worked particularly on the counseling side in managing some of their offices. So she's got a nice breadth of perspective on the retirement process and is now helping us in service retirement, managing that area. So you'll hear more from her in the future. And last thing just to highlight for you, because you're going to talk about the budget in just a few minutes, I want to remind you that last Friday was the deadline in the state for releasing all students from employment. So that was done here in compliance with the collective bargaining agreement with SEIU. For us, again, the implication was over 100 students were let go last Friday in the building. Remember, our employee count here is about 930 FTE. Those I think it was 106 students probably translated into about 60 FTE. Clearly, they're not full-time workers. So there is absolutely a workload impact on the building that we become reliant on that labor force, especially actually in Christine's area. She would be one of the most impacted areas in the building because they were really part and parcel of the service retirement process. So I did want to just catch you on that for a minute. When you hear the budget proposals in a few minutes that Robin will highlight for you, for the most part, they're not reflective of this issue at all. We're going to have to digest the impact of this, look where we can get efficiencies in the building, look where we can do some things differently, maybe even punch up some of the imaging work we do in a few areas. But we may need to at some point talk again to you about the staffing and the organization and whether we do need additional resources from that impact. It changes some of our recruitment. I think I had mentioned to you before, we've hired a number of full-time employees from the student ranks. It's really been a graduation ceremony for some of them to get a position here. So we're sad to see that change. Some of the students will come back to work, though. They must come through traditional state hiring practices. There are temporary classifications that would allow them to apply through competitive processes for those positions. They would become represented employees by doing so, since they would not be any longer independent contractors. So that would change things as well. So we would expect some of them to be able to come back in that process. So we need to, as I said, digest the impact of that. I don't want to come forward and say, absolutely, we're in chaos, we've got to hire X number of people. I don't feel comfortable we're at that point yet in the organization until we sit with this for a little bit. But there could be some implications for us on the hiring side. And last thing, just more for the audience, just around the upcoming offsite in Los Angeles this year, in Santa Monica. It follows a fairly similar format from prior years in that it's based on evaluation of yourselves, evaluation of myself, Chris Ailman, evaluation of your consultants, the executive staff, et cetera. So the majority of this agenda is performance-based and therefore in closed session. So it's not an exciting agenda from a public perspective, but we still are expecting about a day and 2/3 in Los Angeles. And we'll get an agenda to you quite soon now that we've kind of sorted through the last issues. So I think that's all I had
Are
for
there
you at
any
this point.
questions of Jack in his report? All righty. Ed, we'll tee it up with item number 2 then, the California Actuarial Advisory Panel appointment.
Right. This is a panel that was created in statute in 2008 in response to a recommendation made by a commission that was created by Governor Schwarzenegger. And it's a panel of actuaries that are appointed by different pension plans around the state, and they're there to provide impartial information on pensions and identify best practices, and hopefully, particularly some of the smaller plans, use some of that information that comes out of the panel to sort of help them do a better job as in terms of actuarial work. The Teachers Retirement Board gets one of those appointments, and the board had in the past appointed Rick Reed, who's our system actuary, to sit on the board on behalf of the commission, or this panel on behalf of the Teachers Retirement Board. And one of the concerns the board had was, that they wanted to make sure that there weren't significant expenses associated with it to CalSTRS. This is a panel that's of much greater value to some of the smaller plans, and so you had appointed an employee to sit on the panel, and there's no travel expenses because they meet in Sacramento. And his term is up, and so you need to do a new appointment. And normally we would have recommended that Rick continue to serve on the panel. The difficulty is that he's in the middle of a project that we feel has to be completed by the end of the calendar year, and we've redirected his responsibilities so he can focus on that, and actually have given Milliman, who's our consulting actuary, some of the responsibilities that Rick would normally have, just to make sure he could focus all of his attention on this one matter that having to do with some procedures around actuarial valuations and a new data platform that we have. So in consistent with that approach, what we're recommending is that Milliman, specifically Nick Collier, who you all see representing Milliman, serve on the panel as the board's representative through the end of this calendar year, and then at that point, Rick would resume what would otherwise have been his responsibility as representing the board on the panel. Just one correction in the write-up. In our discussions with Milliman, they were agreeable to simply being reimbursed for their travel expenses rather than for their time. That would cut the cost to CalSTRS to around $2,500 just for his travel expenses coming to the meetings, for the balance of the calendar year. So we would recommend it so that the board continues to have representation on the panel, but also allowing Rick to sort of focus his attention on the other matters, that you would appoint Nick Collier to sit on the panel as the board's representative through the balance of the calendar year, and then at that point you could appoint Rick, once Rick's finished with his project, you could appoint Rick to resume as a representative of the board on the panel. And we have a resolution to that effect.
Pedro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, notwithstanding the reduction in cost, I have to express some concern with not having our own person on the panel. I think in the prior item, we brought in-house some of the media, because we like the media. We have it in-house, and we used to consult out for that. We used to go out for some of the investment, and we're bringing that in-house. So I really like the one of our own on this panel, particularly since the report is coming out in February. So I guess I just need to express hesitation of removing Rick from that panel, notwithstanding, I understand the workload, I understand there's a management decision you need to make based on the priorities you need to do. But if for this board member, my preference would be to continue to have him on the panel just because it's our interest, no disrespect to the contractor or the person who's willing to step up and do it for us for the next 4 months. But because the report goes out in February, I think the next 4 months are an important time. So that's just my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Eric?
So my question is, will we have to take action to have Mr. Reed go back once this is, at the end of this? Or does this action state that Mr. Reed will assume that role again without us having to take action?
I guess I defer to Jennifer in terms of whether or not the resolution could be drafted as to make the appointment now effective January 1st. I mean, we could certainly word the resolution to that effect.
I did want to respectfully just comment back on his services. The matter he's working on is a serious business issue. It's not extra work, to say the least. It's a project involving the integrity of our business processes is his area, and we absolutely need this work finished soon. So that's why we made that decision. And as you noticed, most of the parties being appointed are external parties actually to this advisory body. I think, except for ourselves and CalPERS,
Yeah,
I think
everyone
we're
else.
the only two systems that actually considered having our employees serve on this body. So, right.
So Jack, hearing Pedro's concern, if the project that Rick's working on actually gets finished ahead of schedule, not that it would, but in the off chance, could we actually reinstate him earlier?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
We'll be glad to, yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's a possibility. All right. This is an action item. I don't have any other speakers. I do need a motion. It's been moved and seconded that we would approve having Nick Collier serve in Rick's stead during the next 4-month period, and also then replacing Rick as soon as his project is done, whether that's in January or if it's sooner. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Thank you very much. Already, the consent agenda, if those of you that are reading items into the record, or actually, this is the action, so we have action from audits and risk management, benefits and services, and the comp committee, so if you could check in, please. And then we also have our minutes for July 12th, board member education, and the contracts requiring board approval. All of those are action items. So Paul will go first.
Thank you. The Audits and Risk Management Committee met on Thursday, September 6, 2012. The committee received a progress report on the implementation of the corrective action recommended in the June 30th, 2011 External Financial Auditor's Report on Internal Controls and an update on the Quality Assurance Review Corrective Action Plan. The committee discussed the annual report of benefit underpayments and overpayments for fiscal year 2011-2012, as well as the business processes that have been initiated to reduce under and overpayments. The committee also considered the results of the fiscal year 2011-2012 audit plan, including the findings of the employer reporting process audit, the START override process review, the security lending program internal audit, and the results of employer audits issued and associated appeals. Finally, the committee discussed the findings of the State Controller's Office review of CalSTRS pension controls and mechanism and considered CalSTRS's ongoing efforts over the past few years to confront pension spiking. The committee requested that staff present various methods of increasing the number of employer audits performed annually at the November 2012 board discussion of the proposed fiscal year 2013-14 operational budget.
Alrighty, I guess I'm looking, Brian, Jennifer, what is within that we need to
No,
move?
There is nothing. It was just a wonderful report.
I worked hard.
Oh, thanks, yeah. All right,
I
Sharon?
think the only, I'm sorry for interrupting. I think the only item that really needs an action item is the Benefits and Services Committee. There was the performance objectives, so it needs to come to the board for approval.
And the comp committee for the performance targets, correct?
That's not.
No, we did,
No,
no,
there's
that's,
no action on that.
Okay.
So I believe that's the
So I
only
read my
one that's for
report and we
action.
vote on it? Do you know, is that?
yes.
Okay. The Benefits and Services Committee met on Thursday, September 6, 2012, and received information on the 2012 Annual Member Satisfaction Survey. The committee also received a report from Ms. Plett regarding the 2012-13 service performance objectives and updates from Mr. Derman and Ms. Plett. By direction of the committee, I move adoption of the 2012-13 service performance objectives.
Since that's been moved by a committee, it does not need a second. Is there any further discussion? Pedro?
Madam Chair, I used to be in this committee and not anymore, I was informed. But as I read this write-up, for me, one of the things that I kept looking at is on the disability, staff is proposing to decrease the target from 95% to 90% of applications processed within 150 days. An adjustment to reset the target to 90%. It had been moved from 85 to 95%, so we're rationing it down to 90. Where we were accepting this, the previous measure, the measurement reporting lines in exception status is no longer meaningful service. We're doing a 50 basis point. We're now resetting our target for 95%, which I read that to be 5% instead of 50, half a basis or 50 basis point. I see a lot of reductions in the quality of service being provided, and that's a concern to me. There's a client outreach guidance. This reduces the satisfaction targets for both from 90 to 75%. So there's a lot of ratcheting down or lowering the standard, and that just want to express a concern with that. I'm not in the committee, so I did not get to hear the presentation, but
Well, I think it's
as one
worth having
member
Peggy
reading-
speak to a couple of those, especially the satisfaction isn't actually a decrease, it's a different scale, but.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Do you mind, I think it's worth.
Please.
Just taking a second with it, do you mind?
Before Peggy gets started.
Especially
on
I
that,
don't want about the
Peggy, do you think
satisfaction
it's,
piece.
Does it rise to the level that you feel that we should include that information in our report? Because this is kind of goes to what the minutes are for the board.
Well, as I understand it, is that the committee has adopted the action, and now it's up to the board to embrace the action of the committee. So at some
That's
point, the
true.
board is saying, yes, we concur, and at this time, this board member is not concurring.
Got it, got
With
it,
all due
got it.
respect.
Got it. Peggy, if you could please.
So let me speak to the satisfaction issue. As was described, and if you get the opportunity, if you can listen to the transcript or view the Benefits and Services Committee, we did have a full discussion of the change in scale. But basically, we want from changing scales to a standardized 7-point scale across the organization for all satisfaction surveying methodologies. And this is a new metric for us. Instead of using an 8, 9, 10 on a 1 to 10 scale, we're using a 6, 7 on a 7-point scale. So it's measuring things differently, and the percentage works out to be different. The 75 percentile here is roughly equivalent to the same level that we've had in the past, but we're measuring things differently and we're looking at things a little bit differently. Okay. So it's not really a reduction in our focus on member satisfaction. Our focus still stays the same. It's just acknowledging the reality that there could be a difference based on the scale change.
And just to add a little bit, Survey Research and Analysis does report to Human Resources, remarkably. The current satisfaction score, if you, as it sits now, is 64 and converted 63%. So it is a higher target than what it currently is achieving. So I just wanted to give you that comparison.
So you're doing the instead of doing the percentage on 10, is the percentage on 7.
Right.
And actually, at the 75 level, it's a stretch goal for us because when we convert the old data to the new scale, we're not quite there, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it's actually not satisfied anymore, it's highly satisfied. It's top 2. We're actually trying to raise the bar.
Yeah.
But through a better scheme.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And did you want a response, Madam Chair, to his query about the disability?
Sure.
The timeliness on the disability benefit, as more, the standard had been to do 85% within 150 days in the 2 years ago. Last year, we ratcheted it to 95%, and we're modifying that again. What we're finding is that given the financial stress in the school districts, that it encourages more members to apply for a disability benefit than may otherwise have done so as an alternative to layoff. They're feeling those pressures. And many of those require us to do additional testing or additional validation and obtain additional information to make sure that these people are meeting our definition of disability. So it does involve a more focused use of IMEs or independent medical evaluations. Those take longer to schedule out, and so we're unable to meet that time frame for as many cases as we used to in the past, simply because our process is a little more deliberate and some of the applications that we're receiving are less clear as to whether or not the individual met the requirements for a disability benefit.
Okay. Just offline at some point, could you provide me with attachment 1 revised from what the target was and what the target is now?
Actually, that will be included in the information on accomplishment that you'll see next year, or you'll see next month at the offsite.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Alrighty,
Thank you.
thank you. Alrighty? So, we have a motion on the floor to adopt the 12-13 performance targets. Does not need a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed nay. And that also passes. Comp committee does not have a recommendation for the board, but we'll have Harry go ahead and read that into the record.
Which one did?
I think both of them. Brian, both?
There's
They
no,
kind of mirror each other.
There's no HR executive report.
yeah, there's no,
Okay.
there was no executive report, and,
The second one. Oh, that's closed committee.
yeah, it's closed, and
So
you're,
you don't
yeah.
have to worry about it.
no,
All righty.
I think we're good.
Then we have the minutes, the board member education, and the contracts. Are there any pulls? All right, all those 4 items are before you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. I think I did that without a motion. Jennifer, you want me to have a motion so it's official?
Be nice.
It looks better in the minutes.
I was trying to play, catch-up rules up here. Okay, Grant has moved. Can we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Alrighty, that has passed. Consent agenda information, we have item 4. The reports are before you. Entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Alrighty, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. We have passed our consent agenda. So Robin, you're up for our fiscal year 13-14 operating budget. First reading.
I've got a short presentation for you, and then I also want to circle back around to the ARM committee conversation that occurred on the footprint for audits, which relates to one of the BCPs in your packet. You'll also see in a BCP related to the explanation Peggy just gave on the disability program, there's a BCP for an increase in funding related to IMEs, and then independent validations in the aftermath of the award of a disability allowance. So we can talk about those and any other BCPs that you would like to bring to the table, but I wanted to start with just a quick overview. Again, the purpose of this is to get your input on these items and to be able to respond in the presentation in November to that input. So as you direct us, we'll make adjustments here to what we've got proposed. So, I should press forward and not backwards. So the first slide just gives you an overview of our budget and the fact that we're talking about several different pieces. The Teachers Retirement Fund, which has both an annual and continuous portion for administrative expenses. The Teachers Health Benefit Fund, the Teachers Defined Compensation Fund, and then a new line for information technology projects, which was just pulled out of the annual appropriation for the Teachers Retirement Fund. It's still under the Teachers Retirement Fund, but it does hold a different place in the budget in the 12-13 year, so we have reflected that here again in the 13-14 year. The difference for that placement is that it allows us to request reappropriation of the remaining unspent balance from 12-13, which we don't have for you yet, obviously, but it does allow us to include that reappropriation request because this is intended to support ongoing capital projects on the information technology side. In terms of the BCPs that you've seen in the budget presentation that we have in the board book, you will have noticed, I'm sure, that some of them appear like we're not asking for anything. They're 0 and 0. And the reason for that is because in response to a budget letter that came out in fiscal year 11-12, we were asked to assess our vacancies at the governor's direction and determine whether we were really using all of the positions that we had. And the option that we had was to either eliminate positions that were in fact showing as vacancies or reduce our what is called salary savings from our operating expenses. And we elected the other with an explanation to the Department of Finance that we expected to need the positions for future use related to our information technology projects and member service centers. So what you are seeing is the reflection of that commitment back in terms of we're not asking for these, what we call FTEs, full-time equivalents, because we in fact have that in our ongoing vacancy level. So we are in fact using those positions in a constructive way going forward, as we had committed to in our response. So I know it seems odd, but it's to demonstrate the fact that we, in fact, are using those apparent vacancies to fill a need that was coming in a future period. And again, what we had explained to our budget analysts over at Finance was that because of the information technology needs we had, because of the expansion of member service centers, that we didn't want to give up those positions. We were going to continue to have needs for them in the future. So most of the increases in the budget that you see in this packet in terms of percentage of dollars has to do with estimates for increases in what I'll call statewide expenses and salary and benefits. So as you can see here, we are asking for an increase in authority, but about 81% of that for the teacher's retirement fund in the annual support appropriation is due to these estimates for increased costs. So you'll also see an adjustment to reduce the one-time expenditures from the 12-13 budget. And then we do have a series of budget change proposals, many of which don't have any cost impact or any FTE impact. You can, in the BCPs that we have presented, you'll see that there are requests to exchange contract dollars for state staff beyond what we had committed to use out of the vacancies. So you see that for information technology services, for audit services. For the ISO, we're actually asking for funding and positions. For human resources, we're asking for funding and positions, again, in response to the long-term increase in staffing that we've had in the organization. So there are a few actual increases in the budget change proposals that we are presenting to you, but they're targeted at particular areas for particular reasons. And so the increase itself is a low percentage. This reflects the change in corporate governance, which is the portion of our operating budget within the Teachers Retirement Fund that is continuously appropriated. And again, the only increase here that is requested from this budgetary process is to compensate for those anticipated increases in expenses due to salaries and benefits. I do have a slide here about the Deferred Compensation Fund. Although it is in your packet, we failed to put in the item a request that you allow us to spend additional revenues that are received for the program. It's something we did in the prior cycle to ask you to give us authority beyond what the budget projects. To the extent that there is cash in there from the growth of the program, we'd like to be able to fund that growth through additional resources to the program. So what I've got in the deck is explaining what this fund does, and then also talking about the fact that there is a normal, again, the same request for increase in the baseline budget request, but then we're also asking that you allow us, to the extent that we receive money from the program, cash revenue, that we can spend an additional 5% of the budgetary authority using that revenue should it exist. So again, this is something that we did last year, and I apologize for not having had it in the book. We missed it, so put it here. So again, what it is this is a continuously appropriated item. It is self-funded, and what we're asking for is the authority to spend additional revenue that is earned in that future period on expenses up to 5% of the baseline budget amount. Okay, again, this just recaps the fact that there is a separate line item now for information technology projects, and that any remaining unspended dollars from 12 and 13 could be reappropriated in the Budget Act for 13-14. We've presented that language as we proposed this change through the budgetary process last year, and we've got the reappropriation language pending for 13-14. Okay, and then I have individual change proposals. I don't have a need to go through them. I would rather, if it's pleases you to have a discussion about things that you had particular questions about. I certainly can go over them. I was just hoping that we could spend the time targeting on those areas that you had most concern about.
Madam Chair, I just want to go on the record that I will stay off discussions on this, given the position of the Department of Finance. My staff will have a chance to go through the proposals at a later date. So consistent with that fine tradition of finance.
It's a tradition.
I don't have anyone in line, but Rob and I do have some questions.
Okay.
And usually I try to ask these ahead of time, and I just didn't get around to it. So I'd like to go to page 40 in the board book. And we've had a decrease in member and employer contributions of both negative 2.75. Is that basically from loss of members because of job losses and the decline in salaries and
Yes, it reflects our,
associated with the angst that our school districts
Yeah.
are going through? And then on page 41, Pedro, I'm going to challenge you to see if you can stay out of this one. If historically the budget for pro rata is calculated by the Department of Finance, and we get that information in October and November, but we've chosen this time, and perhaps this is historic, we're using a 4-year trend analysis. So can you talk to me a little bit about why you think that that's a better estimate of what our cost would be? And the second part of that is, if it turns out that it's not a better cost analysis, and we don't want to wait till October or November to start building our budget, can we get the Department of Finance to do their estimate to us earlier?
So we've used the trend analysis to be able to give you a projection at this meeting. When we come back to you in November, we will use whatever information we have received from finance. I actually saw a budget letter coming through today, flying by, and I went far enough to see what the title was, and I haven't opened it up. But it seems to be titled pricing, so my expectation is that the pricing, at least for some portion of this, will be in there. So certainly when we bring this back to you in November, we would have the information to make a more accurate presentation. What we wanted to do is to give you our best guess as to what it would be.
Okay, thank you. And Paul?
Thank you. On the discussion we had this morning at Audit and Risk Management, there is a discussion here of request for $439,000 and 3 FTEs.
Right.
So just to, since I'm not exactly sure I understand what this process would be, I mean, if we were to ask for, this is only talking about wanting to hire more people and spending more money. But what we talked about this morning is that, you know, it may well be that it more than pays for itself. So how does that reality factor into the putting the budget together and making the request over to finance?
Well, so I'll take the budgetary part of it, and then we can talk about what we can do from here as well. So we've had some offline discussions, and I've gone and validated with our budget staff what kind of license we have. So in terms of the challenges of recognizing both the benefits and the cost of something like this, that is the challenge that we face, in that our operating budget is through this support appropriation, and the return is in our continuous appropriation, in that it's a savings on benefit payments, right? So we're talking about two different pools of money, both within the Teachers' Retirement Fund. And the pools of money are really the control level around spending or revenue. So the budget actually does have information on spending for benefit payments, and it's not something we talk with you about because effectively it's continuously appropriated. So it does appear in the governor's budget, but it is a loosely estimated number. So what we would do in terms of making having the discussion on the budget change proposal is we would reflect anticipated future savings in benefit payments, but it wouldn't have a direct offset to the cost. That's the challenge. Does that make sense? Did I?
Yeah, no, it does. I
okay.
mean, that's what I'm trying to understand. I
Right,
mean,
right.
I mean,
So-
it's all well and good for us to think it's a good idea, but right,
Right.
we have to convince others too.
Right, so again, that, we would use that discussion as a part of the presentation in the budget change proposal. And certainly in discussions with legislative staff, the Department of Finance, those items are in fact discussed. And we all acknowledge that there's not, it's hard because we're only showing one side of the equation and not the other. The same is true of other items in our budget like reimbursements, again, which are revenue-generating items, but it's not something we talk with you about in these kinds of discussions. So what we tried to do in the budget item is just show you what the inflows and outflows are so you can get an overall picture. So that's where the benefit expenses are in there, but the explicit savings as a result of audits are not necessarily documented in that same way. So, and then in terms of the mechanics of responding to the ARM Committee's requests this morning, we do have the authority, and again, I defer to Department of Finance, but I think this is okay. Yeah, he docked. But we could, in a budget change proposal, we could ask for a certain amount of money for the budget year, which would be 13-14. We could ask for the same or another amount of money, a greater amount of money in 14-15. So, we have some flexibility internally as we talk about what to bring back to you and to respond to the request and also allow for perhaps a refinement of that over time and then bring that back to you as we know more. We would at least put a placeholder in for a larger amount in a subsequent fiscal year, the budget year.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yeah.
So that we wouldn't have to have done all of the analysis that will be necessary to determine what the actual solution might be from an operating perspective, but put a placeholder in a future budget year, so the budget year for 14-15 in this request. So it wouldn't be that we would be going back to the well again, that we would have that prospective thinking that would allow the conversations with the reviewers to acknowledge the fact that this has come up, but we don't have the specifics at this point, so we're doing a more macro level plan. So,
Nope, that's
so that's the research that we've done in the
anybody else? All righty. Thank you, Robin.
So any other changes that you want to see, or we'll just bring this back then with any additional refinement that we have from our own analysis, both on the pro rata and the any other cost items or additional information we have in November. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Robin.